Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode in the Founder's Journey into Bitcoin. Today, we're very lucky to be joined by Diego. He's the CEO of IOV Labs. He is also the co-founder of Rootstock, as well as other companies. But before we get into that really exciting news, let's start from the beginning. Diego, thanks for joining us today. Thank you for your time. How are you doing?
My pleasure. My
Yeah, thanks for
pleasure.
joining us. Thanks for joining us. You have quite the eclectic entrepreneur experience. I understand that you've been an entrepreneur pretty much your whole life. Now,
Yeah.
can we backtrack to say before you start your first company? Like, did you have any side hustles, or how did you realize that you wanted to be an entrepreneur so early on in life?
Well, I live it as as you mentioned, it's like I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. It's like first I was doing projects, social projects. So it was more not with a business oriented focus, but I was like building different social projects like community centers, like helping people like in the slums of Buenos Aires organize to get access to cheaper food. And I started that. I also helped create the Green Party in the ecological party in Argentina. So I was always doing things like I'm talking back when I was 12. So this was like a period of my life.
Wow. Okay.
So since
You got
12
started
to,
early.
yes, to my 20s, early 20s. No? Then I decided I realized for me, and that later led me into Bitcoin, that a little bit of the problems of society were because power structures were becoming stiff or crystallizing. So I wanted to create different models of organization. And at the same time, I decided to stop doing activism in political structures and everything.
Uh-huh.
I started doing the first projects on the web. So first, actually, I started in multimedia. I would say that's a good gap. I had like 2-3 years where I was, in a way, in organizations that are other built, but there were startups as well. So the spirit was still entrepreneurial. No, it's like I was an employee, but I never acted as an employee because these were early projects in the beginning in multimedia. And we're talking about 1992 when I was 17. So I was working on multimedia, the first touchscreen systems, the first. Also, I was exploring BBS. So I was also a node in one BBS network that was like if you want, the predecessor of the internet, no, in a way. So there was always something related to community creation and things. And as an employee in those two years in other companies, I was like always contributing to the creation of those companies because they were startups, like building multimedia solutions and everything. Then I got in touch with a group that created like a 50-year anniversary CD-ROM for the main newspaper in Argentina. And also they, within a huge corporation, but they created a new area. They created the media, like the media lab within the newspaper. And they invited me. I was a third member. They invited me
This
to
is
be
like a
part.
digital media, right? This is like a traditional
Exactly.
newspaper, and then like they want to go digital, and this is like the beginning of that.
The beginning. That was 1995. So
wow. Okay.
because
Right.
of my background in CD-ROMs and interactives and everything, they invite me to be the third member of this new area. So also, in a way, it was like entrepreneurship because it was like a big corporation, but for a while, like for a year and a half, we were like outside the structure. We had a lot of freedom. We were experimenting. That's how I was the first webmaster of that newspaper. And together with other members, we created the first version, web version of the newspaper. So that's how I started. Then after that, a friend of mine, Wences Casares, who is also into the Bitcoin space, he has Sapo, one of the biggest like Bitcoin bank. in the world. And he also started an ISP. We met in 1996, and not many people understood the web back in the day. So we clicked. We became friends. It's like we met because he was looking for funding, and I was doing the due diligence for the investor, but we were both in our 20s, like 20, 21, my case, 22 in his case. And then we became friends. 1 year later, I joined him in his startup, also to start the web division.
And that's the ISP company, right?
Exactly. So he had the ISP, and he told me, Dieguito, why don't you come and you start the web development division? So it was also
Let me just make sure because there's so many acronyms now. Are you saying internet service provider? Let me just make sure.
Internet service provider.
Okay.
Back in the day, it was like today the telcos do that, but back in the day you have companies that were specifically providing internet access to people, so you would subscribe to them for internet. So there were small companies, and they were using the telcos infrastructure. No, so in a way they were borrowing the telcos infrastructure to do this. And as part of that, I helped create 2 projects. So again, it was like very entrepreneurial. Even though I was not the owner of the business, I helped create one agricultural platform and another one devoted to the health industry. And then a friend of mine from the newspaper invited me to work on a portal. Back in the day, you had this concept of like content aggregators, and that would have like all sorts of applications.
Like Yahoo was one of the big,
exactly,
like,
Yahoo
portals.
was one of them, and there were 2 that were very big in Latin America. The biggest one was Star Media. The second one was El Sitio, and he invited me to join El Sitio. And very soon, like a couple months after I got in, I sorted out the big problem with the infrastructure, and because of that, my friend became the CTO of El Sitio, and I became the R&D manager. Also very young, I was like 24 back then, so it was very. And then El Sitio started like a regional expansion, and we like an IPO in NASDAQ in the 2000s. So we went from 50 people to 500 people in a year, and I was also helping like open the offices in different places, like the technological part. Also building, we created matchmaking. I would say the first matchmaking application in Latin America called CupidoNet. Many different things. And then I was invited to another startup that was creating like educational content, and I in a way I was invited to relaunch the startup. And I knew a lot of the ad-based business model, because El Sitio was like bringing eyeballs and then selling advertised. As part of my work there, also I implemented the first like ad management systems. The one, DoubleClick, was one that is now the enterprise solution for Google on ad management. So I with that experience, I knew that ad-based business model were not working. So I told them, why don't we go to software as a service? This was like between 2000 and 2002. And at that one for me was like a step up, in the sense that I was sitting on the decision-making room. No, I was the CTO, but also like I was shaping the business, helping like move the business from content-based into software as a service model. We started with the private sector, then we realized the market was too small at that moment. We deployed the solution in many places in Latin America, and then we moved into the public sector, and I designed a concept where we were using these tools, management tools, for schools, and then all the information was gathered into the Ministry of Education or Secretary of Education. And then, with that information, like the Ministry of Education could do planning, like proactive planning of the growth of the educational system. So we did a couple implementations, one in Tierra del Fuego, the southern city province in the world, I would say. It's in Argentina, but it's a southern place in the world. And then also one in Dominican Republic. So it was interesting project. And after that, I was kind of burnout. And
What year
because
was this? When
this
you got burned
was
out?
2002, at the end of 2002.
Okay.
I didn't know yet. So I went to the US. Wences, my good friend, invited me there. He told me, because he moved a couple of years before there to Miami, and I said, why don't you like hang out with me? And then I went there with the idea of like producing software in Argentina and then selling it in the US, because the exchange rate was very favorable, and in Argentina we had a lot very good software development capabilities. But when I got there, I realized I was burned out. I didn't knew back then, so forcefully I had to like stop like doing. I mean, luckily I had like like the ability to realize that this was like a signal from my body and my brain that I need to stop. So I was living in a sailboat, first in Wence's sailboat, then I bought one, and I was living on a sailboat and doing like recovering from that.
That's very
But of
spiritual.
course, yes, I mean that was good. That was that was needed also. Like I think
How long were you living on a sailboat for?
it was in total a year and a half. I was coming back and forth between Argentina
Nice.
and the
Very
US and
nice.
sailing around, going the Bahamas, the Southern Islands. So it
So
was,
so
yeah,
sometimes you would just wake up and it's just like the big blue sky and the sea.
yeah. I would say
That
every day. Every day. That's
wow.
where because I was living for a brief time in a marina, but then at Anchor most of the time. So actually, I was going to sleep with the stars above me, and I was waking up, with in the middle of the water, like connected
Wow.
with nature.
I
That was
I I think we have a whole conversation about that. I've experienced that just a few times, but like just even like 1 week at a time was very powerful for me. Just every day, waking up to the ocean and sky. It's very spiritual, I would say.
absolutely reconnecting with nature is like a big reset. No, I learned that it's
Yeah.
like even if I was doing things like not much back then, but I was like even if I was working and everything, it's like waking up there in contact with nature was a big reset. It's like and going to sleep under the stars and everything. It was like yeah, resetting
It,
my
I felt so much younger too, even after a week. So I can't imagine after a year and a half
yeah.
what that would have done. Like it's like rejuvenating, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was like, but you have to understand that I was coming from a total burnout. So in a way, you know, but it was very important. That recovery was very important. It also allowed me to, because the entrepreneurial life is like, yeah, very strange. It's like before that I was for 12 years like 24/7, because as I said, even though I was in some cases working for others, my way of being and working was never like that of an employee. I was always working like full life and devoting myself in full to what I was doing. So in a
Yeah, I
way,
could see that.
yeah. And that experience also allowed me to, I would say, just recently I achieved that, but allow me to start adding balance as part of my life. Is like one of the elements I tried to incorporate at that time was like certain things I wanted to work on, like discipline and things, but also working on trying to seek for balance. No, although as I said, I didn't reach that for many years more,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. No, it's a gradual process. But can you share with the audience like roughly what your schedule looks like nowadays? Because you've been working for many years to reach this balance, right? Before it's 24/7, right? You're young and you could
well,
like right. It's like
I think
nonstop before, but
I
then
still
now,
work.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I still have like a pretty intense, like, but it's maybe 10 hours per day, but it's 10 hours, very intense hours, because usually I have meetings back to back. It's like I really But some things a few years ago I did was like, for example, stop working and checking emails and WhatsApp and so on, and during the weekends. So unless there is an emergency or something needs my attention, it's like there is a moment where I stop, where I said, okay, now I switch to the family, I switch to to myself, to have time with friends, to enjoy life. That's one thing that I started, and it was very, very important for me. That I think I started doing it 3 years ago, 2020. So that was a big, big improvement.
Wow.
The other thing is
No
certain.
easy task. That's not an easy
Yes.
task.
Yes.
So
And
congratulations for finding that balance. Yeah,
thank
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very envious of that.
I mean, I still
Right.
check things and everything, but not like, it's like very on the
Yeah,
side.
yeah, it's on
If
the
there's
side.
something that not like, because before that I was like having meetings. In our organization, we work like with people from all over the world. So, I was having meetings on Sundays with people from Asia, or no, it's like we have like
The,
that
the
kind
time
of
zone. Yeah.
24 rolling. So before I started stopping at the weekends, I was at times like working from from morning from dawn till dusk,
Yeah,
and
no,
from
that
Monday to Sunday. So in a way and that was kind of like breaking me psychologically. So that's at certain point I said, no, I need to have a stop and switch. And the other thing is like certain things I protect a lot, like my time with my children. That's something I know I don't negotiate anymore. I used to. Uh, with my health, like training, I do yayutsu, that is sword training, Japanese sword training,
mhm.
um,
Oh,
and I
very
used to
cool.
do boxing. So like I try to not also negotiate like my health spaces. No, and then some things, the social life, sometimes I have to give up, but it's okay. It's like there are certain spaces of my personal life that are untouchable and are respected, so that's important.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you shared that because there are a lot of budding and new entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot more to life than just being successful in a company, and there's a wisdom there, right? The health is number one. Health should not be compromised because that's what allows us to move forward. And then the other thing is, of course, family. That's so important,
Your
right?
beloved
And
ones, no, it may,
yeah,
whether it's your children, your close friends, but I think it's like, it's like I didn't have that realization until very recently. It's like it needs to go from inside out. No, it's like first you need to be well. You need to rest enough hours. That's something I changed just even more recently. So sleep at least 7 hours per day. Water. Eat as healthy as you can. Um, then of course, training if you can, but then family for me is first. But then the following is like doing exercise, because at the end that changes also your mind, keeps you active. But you know how it goes when you are an entrepreneur. You have all these preoccupations, like problems, like you bring problems home with you. There's no split between personal and
yes.
business life, and sometimes you feel you're losing time, no, or that you are not doing like so. But at the end, when you realize that what balance bring is like sharpening your axe, no, it's like you can be trying to cut a log with a dual axe for days, and maybe you have, if you take that time to sharpen the axe, you will cut it down in a few hours, no.
I,
So in a
I,
way,
yeah.
that is
Go
sharpening
ahead.
the axe. It's like sleeping well, taking care of your family and your beloved ones, taking care of your body, sharpening your axe. So your efforts will be much more powerful if you take that time, no?
Yeah, I think that statement there is so powerful. I want to repeat it again for the audience. So, although you had to sacrifice some time from entrepreneurship and put it on your health and your family, and it seems on the surface you're spending less hours, but in actuality, those less hours are worth a lot more now, right?
Exactly.
Because
So you are more
you're
impactful by,
Right.
I mean, if you want your tool, is your mind and your body is your tool in
Yeah.
the world, and also your emotion. It's important. It's like how you are emotionally. That's why taking care of your body, of your health, and taking care of your loved ones and the relationship with them is like basically like, you know, fine tuning and keeping your tool in the world in optimum conditions, and that will make your actions more impactful in the world. So even for your entrepreneur, for your startup, it's very important that you devote time to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that the audience takes this to heart. I'm also in the camp where I sort of like, why did I realize this when I was in my 20s? Right? Um, and yeah, I can't think of a few entrepreneurs that I've trained in the past, and they have a good balance between their family, their health, and their business, and actually they are doing very well, even though they're very young. It's not easy though. It's really not easy. It takes in my case also it took me years, and I'm still working at it. Uh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a process. It's like, I think it's like you cannot be too harsh with yourself as well. No, it's like
that's right.
you know,
That's right. That's right. It's
I
almost like
started.
the harder you try, the actually is going backwards, right? Sometimes. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like little things. No, it's like small habits that you can like get into your life. It's like you know, I started with the intention at the age of 30, and I would say now is the moment where I have the better balance. So it took me like more than 15 years to get to
Wow.
that point. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So let's I think the story um of your entrepreneurship journey was, you got burned out, you said 2002, and so that
Yes.
was, you know and so there was from 2002 to 2009, which as we know is the year of Bitcoin. um what happened, right? So let me just recap for
Well,
some of the people who are just joining us.
yes,
uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Right after those 2 years, like I went back to Buenos Aires in full time, like because I was coming back and forth, but and um, and then I started like a software factory, but with a specific aim that was working. I mean, use the software factory to help entrepreneurs build their dreams or their solution. So
Oh, very cool, very cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a very nice process. It was like 10 years, 10 years of building, learning a lot. I think that company was my MBA. I made all the all the mistakes you can imagine.
So
Like,
this is like your first like company that you're the CEO and founder, right? Or is
yes, I actually, in parallel to my other endeavors, I did two attempts before, but it was like as an employee, so it was very tough. Like I was like, so I would say this
like an
was the third.
entrepreneur?
Yes, so I was
Yeah.
always in parallel trying to build my company. Like, so I started the first one in 1998, I think 1990, yeah, seven. The second, same name. I was iterating, was version one, version two.
Okay.
The second one was this one. I started like when I decided when I realized I was burnout, and the third one was this one. Um, and I also capitalized a lot from the previous experiences, no? So because I had different partners in each one of the iterations, and I learned a lot of things, but still I made a lot of mistakes, from mispricing the services, not understanding it. Argentina is tough environment, no? It's like if you make it in Argentina, then you make it anywhere, because it's like it's not, even the customers sometimes are not reliable in terms of paying, and there's a lot of like constant, you have inflation, constant change of the rules. So it's like, I would say
Mm,
it's one of the more extreme environments to be an
yeah, that's
entrepreneur.
harsh. That's harsh.
Yes. And I think at the end, after 10 years, we managed to get a model that was a proper model and was working. But, and that's something that happens a lot with entrepreneurs, we didn't have the will in us anymore. It's like when we find the way, it's like we were like worn out for so many years of struggle and work. And also at the same time, I got in touch with Bitcoin. And, you know, since the 90s, I was looking for something that would make me vibrate in the same way as the web did. And when I saw Bitcoin, I realized that was it. So you know, it's like two years before I decided to unwind the software factory, I started actively working on Bitcoin and creating the Bitcoin
Wow,
communities.
so that software factory, sorry for interrupting. That sounds like the software factory went for a long time, like almost like a decade.
Yeah, it was the software factory
So it's very successful. Okay.
Yeah, and we build amazing things. It's like we build, for example, yeah, many companies that are still around and are very successful. We build the solutions and the platforms for them, and also I mentor the entrepreneurs because they were young.
That's so fulfilling. That's so fulfilling.
Yes. So in a way, I think our work transcended us. No, if the company is no longer around, but the work we did and the entrepreneurs we helped,
yeah, it still lives on.
Yes. So
now I'd like to double click into, so you know, like you said, you transcended, and now it's sort of like, okay, that was the last chapter, and then you're looking for something that made you vibrate like the internet.
Yes,
right?
and
then you
I would say
Bitcoin. Can you like zoom in on that feeling and like, you know, like try to describe it?
Yes, for me, it's like I would say I started having that feeling again around 2010, 2011 through the entrepreneurs I was helping, because new like more, you know, after the dot-com crash, it's like for a while the space was like a little bit like slow down, and there were not like exciting or new things happening. It's like it was like more of like a slow, you know, aggregation of things on top of other things. But in 2010, 2011, I started feeling like a new vibe, because some entrepreneurs, these young entrepreneurs, were coming with interesting ideas. I was helping them, like, you know, I mean, the Groupons, like community buying, for example, peer-to-peer lending started back then, Prosper, different companies that without the proper infrastructure, but the ideas were innovative. Like we started like having like a comeback of, if you want, the innovative thinking that we had in the 90s and late mid 90s and early 2000s. So I started having a vibe that things were like reactivated. And when I was in that process, like helping some entrepreneurs, I connected, I got in touch with Bitcoin. And
okay.
because of my friend Wences. So Wences was present in my life in many many important.
Was this the guy who the ISP in the very beginning?
Yes. So Wences was the
wow.
guy
So
in
this
the
is
ISP.
like
He was
over
the
like a
one who
decade.
invited me to live on his
Okay.
sailboat. And
what? Oh, okay. Wow.
he brought me back to
Okay.
Bitcoin, because actually I saw Bitcoin like in 2011 and I didn't get it. I mean, I saw it was interesting, was digital money, a lot of things, but I didn't get the true depth of it. And Wences like got into Bitcoin also around there, like early 2012, and called me like, Dieguito, you need to check this out. This is amazing. I said, yeah, I saw it already. It's okay, but I don't think there's no, you have to check it out. So he like forced me to open an account in Blockchain Info. That was a web wallet. It still is. It's blockchain.com now. And he sent me like 5,000 Bitcoins. That back then was like 50K USD. And I sent those back. But the interesting thing is, like in Argentina, we had capital control. So getting money in and out was almost impossible. And I had that problem. So for me, it was a big problem with customers we had abroad in the US and Europe. Like bringing the money into Argentina was taking me like a month, and I was losing 9-10% of the money in
And
the
this
process.
is like that.
Yeah. So when I saw that,
I
said,
to like 20 minutes.
Exactly. Wow. So we did this full process. He was in Silicon Valley, I was in Buenos Aires. So we did this full process in under an hour. We had permission from nobody, and the cost was like 50 cents USD. So when I saw that, that was like, I
Wow.
said, wow. I mean, this is
Okay.
how, that's when I had my aha moment, because I said, this is how
Ah,
what I call today the Internet of Value should look like. It's like, it has the same attributes we were like seeing in the web in terms of openness, neutrality, this global way of connecting, but for money. So then after that I was almost non-sleeping for 15 days, reading about it, like reading about Bitcoin, reading about like mostly on the monetary aspects, because as my background is technological, or was. Now I I had a lot of data on the financial side, but until then I was mostly focused on technology and society and entrepreneurship, and then I realized, like, okay, yeah, this is something else, and I started reading about the history of money, Bretton Woods, like how the financial structure of the world was structured. And after that, I decided to devote myself in full to this. So I went to my partners on the software factory and told them, I'm sorry, but this is where I need to be. So I will continue to help on the software factory, but you need to take over the day to day, and I will start like experimenting at the beginning, because with disruptive technologies, you never know where they are going. So the only way to understand them is to actually like experiment with them. So I was, I started like meeting with people in cafes, selling Bitcoin with a group of friends. We bought a bus, an old bus, because we had this adventure project where we wanted to connect Tierra del Fuego, the southern city in the world, with Alaska, going with this old bus. So we bought, they were sending me Bitcoins from different places of the world. I was converting that to dollars and buying the bus, which is still in transit. So, so it's around Ecuador now. But the thing is, like, I started doing that because I wanted to know who was involved. So most of the early miners were from the 3D gaming scene, because it was young kids that already have like graphic cards, and they were mining on their spare time when they were not playing games. So I met with them. It was very interesting. And then I started like with two partners. We started building the Bitcoin community in Argentina. That was early 2013, and helped create Bitcoin communities in all Latin America. And in the process, I was trying to define, where to apply. Like for me, that process was mostly about doing everything. Like even with the software factory, we created a platform so people could know the exchange rate of Bitcoin in Argentinian pesos, because in Argentina we have this weird situation where you have the real dollar rate and the official dollar rate that at the moment, for example, is half. So it's like the spread between the real value of a dollar and the government value of a dollar is like huge. So we created this platform because tourists were coming with Bitcoins, and they were being ripped off because they didn't understand these dimensions. So I was doing everything. I started mining. I bought one of these GPU miners and mined for a while. And at the end of 2013, I decided I wanted to put the Bitcoin technology at the service of sorting out the problem of financial inclusion. So that was like the moment I decided. So I started on one side a company I'm still running called Coinbanks, with the idea of democratizing access to investment. So creating like now it's what is called real world assets, has a name. No, a lot of things back in the day didn't have a name. Now they have a name. And creating kind of a sales force for blockchain services. So saying, okay, we will need somebody that will abstract the complexities of blockchain technology and provide this as a tool that businesses can use for different things, no? Traceability, financial, services or handling. So I started doing that, and in that process, also from the Bitcoin Argentina NGO, we created a group of voluntaries. We started going to the slums, inviting entrepreneurs from the slums to the meetups to see how was the experience of selling their food with Bitcoin. And yes.
Can I interrupt for a second? Yeah, I see how your experience from before was also activated during this time, right? When you were a teenager. It's
Absolutely.
like everything was, the thoughts were connecting for you. Like
I think those are
that's
two tracks that were always technology and social transformation were two tracks that are in me since I started programming at 11. I started going to the slums with my mother at 9, but actively by myself at 12. So in a way that those two tracks were always present in my life, and at this moment they started like converging in a way.
Yeah, social empowerment and the technology and entrepreneurship.